This is The Premise, and I'm your host,
Chad Thompson. Chad Thompson's the host.
I'm the host. I'm Jeniffer Thompson.
And I'm Chad Thompson, the host.
Today on The Premise, we are speaking with Belo Cipriani. Belo has served as an accessibility and recruiting consultant for Fortune 100 companies, including Apple, Google, Toyota, Facebook, and Wells Fargo, among others. He is an award-winning author, prize-winning journalist, an advocate for disabled persons, and is blind himself. He is a publisher and the CEO and founder of Oleb Media, an ADA compliance firm. Belo, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Well, so Belo, one of the things that I think will be of interest to our readers is how, as a storyteller, you've really had to fight to not just get your story told, but to be taken seriously as a writer and an author. You know, doors didn't open for you, but you never accepted no for an answer. And in many ways, I think you've kind of had to build your own doors along the way. And now you're opening doors for other writers of disability. Your personal story arc is impressive, to say the least, and we're going to get into that. Your story is one of resilience, stick-to-itiveness, passion, and of always fighting for what you believe in. I'd like to take our listeners through your journey because I think it shows how important it is to believe in our dreams and to never give up. So my first question is, had you always wanted to be a writer?
Not really. Actually, I think that, when I think back to when I was a kid and I was, dreaming of the future, I was, I think I wanted to be an engineer and be in tech, and I did achieve that, and in retrospect, I wonder how much of that was, actually me, or me also being pushed towards that, space. So I grew up, I'm a millennial, so I grew up in the 90s where placement tests were super popular. Everyone was taking a career readiness test, and I was always testing really high in math. And every single time I took those tests, I was always pegged as an engineer, and I accepted that. So, I followed that trajectory, went to college and majored in information systems. And it wasn't until I became blind where I was just so full of emotions and was seeing a therapist for my PTSD that I started to write. And so definitely as of today, I feel as though that if I hadn't lost my sight, I would have never become a writer.
Do you mind sharing with our listeners how you came to be blind?
Oh, no, not at all. Not at all. As a memoirist, I'm what I refer to as emotionally slutty. So I like to share my emotions all the time and with anyone who would listen.
And I think it's important, too, for our listeners to know that you wrote a book. You wrote a memoir, Blind, a Memoir, that was actually endorsed by Amy Tan.
It was, and it also picked up a couple awards. And, it's the memoir focuses on my recovery period from an assault that took place on April 13th, 2007. I was in San Francisco working in tech, and I came across a group of friends from high school, and our meeting turned sour. They began to insult me, and before I knew it, they were beating me up. So I had a group of men kicking me all over my body, but my cause of blindness is retinal detachment from receiving multiple blows to the head.
Wow.
So in a nutshell, I became instantly blind and disabled. And I went from being somebody who was able-bodied and very independent to somebody who was given a new life and was trying to figure out how to, make that life work.
Wow. Yeah. And so, I can't even imagine being sighted one day and being blind the next. And I can't even begin to imagine how angry you must have been. How did you get through those initial dark days?
I was very fortunate that my family has always been supportive. Within days of me being hospitalized and trying to navigate the betrayal, because these people were my high school friends. And there's that aspect that makes this this tragedy a lot more complex, where I felt betrayed by these people. And so, my support, was instantly provided by my family, who came in and helped me. My mom moved in with me to help me, rehab my house. I had to figure out how to do things around my house and, buy equipment and label things. I feel as though that also me losing my site in San Francisco was important, because the Bay Area as a whole, people may not recognize this, but the ADA was born in the Bay Area.
Really? Oh, yeah.
A lot of the big disability social justice movements came from the Bay Area, from Berkeley, from San Francisco. And so there's a lot of great advocacy agencies there. And so within days of, getting my doomsday diagnosis that I would never see again, I had social workers at my home. I was scheduled to take Braille classes. And so it was just many things that were happening at the same time. My family support from my community, but also really being, I think, also forced to do these things, where I feel as though, if I had, lost my sight slowly, I probably wouldn't have, been pushed to take all these classes. I felt like there was this part of me that's like, okay, well, what are my other options, right? I really don't have any, so I should just try to, do the best that I can. Right.
And I mean, you are really educated. How many degrees do you have?
I have 2 master's degrees and a doctorate.
Wow. And talk to us
Slacker.
about... Yeah, right? You're making us look bad, Belo. I mean, why? So why did you get so many degrees? Tell us about that path.
They all happen organically. And I'll preface with saying that I didn't just wake up one day and say, oh, I'm going to get a master's and a doctorate.
I'm going to be really educated. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I wasn't planning to be like on a game show or anything, things just happened, opportunities came up and I just took them. And so the first one was when I was working in San Francisco for a staffing agency, and I was laid off after the 2008, mortgage meltdown. And so when I got laid off, I decided to use that time to, go to grad school and really focus on writing. By that time, I had started, with small little journal entries, and then started sharing with friends and family. And I got really positive feedback and thought that maybe I should give this writing thing a shot, and went to get my master's in creative writing. And, that just opened up a whole other, world of opportunities. I started doing freelance journalism. But I think what really was happening was that it was hard for me to look for work. And I was, constantly figuring out how to, find new ways of employment. And so that's kind of what led me to get my second master's and, my doctorate, where I was looking to find work. And, at the end of the day, I found more success by, starting my own business than trying to, get a full-time job with a company.
I heard a statistic a couple of years ago in terms of how many blind people are actually able to find gainful employment, and the numbers were startlingly low.
They really are. So within the blind community, and I would like to point out to not just unemployment, but underemployment. So right. For instance, for me, when I was working, for the San Francisco Chronicle, I was employed, but it was part-time work. And I couldn't get full-time because I couldn't, edit video or pictures
fast enough, or yeah.
Exactly. So there's it's the underemployment that's even a bigger problem, where people are taking jobs just because they need something, but it's not ideal. And, thus, consequently, they're not making what they want to make or what they would like to make.
Yeah. Well, but you really pushed through. So you really worked at getting a job as a journalist. And I remember, because I knew you then, you were going through the process. And I remember when you got hired by the San Francisco Chronicle, and I was actually kind of surprised by your area of, your assignment. So tell us a little bit about what you were writing for the Chronicle.
Sure. At that time, I was the career advice blogger, and so
that's just so funny to me. Like, here you are, you represent, a community that's underemployed, and you're the career advice columnist.
It was shocking, and I felt as though at times I felt like a little bit of a hypocrite, because here I was telling people, giving the Bay Area advice on how to find or keep their job or get a promotion, or at the same time, I was struggling with that myself.
Sure.
And so I noticed that whenever there was times where I really opened up with my readers and say, this is just really tough, this sucks, they were very happy about it. When I was working for the Chronicle, I was trying to figure out my place in the world and my place, in society. And so I was struggling with my identity, and it was something that was hard for me because, I call myself like a Swiss Army knife of minorities, because, I'm Jewish, I'm a person of color. My dad's family, we're Afro-Brazilian, and I'm gay. And, all these things were always a big part of, of my life and my identity.
You tick a lot of the boxes, right?
Yeah, I did, but with disability, it was something where, for instance, when, I grew up Jewish, but I had my family, my mom to tell me, well, this is how this is what Jewish means for us. And I had that support system. When I came out as gay, I found that support from the gay community by going to, gay places. But when I became disabled, that was harder to find. And so I wanted to really study religion. So I ended up getting a master's in religious studies. And I did that just because I wanted to kind of come up with my own, spiritual practice that didn't just encompass, my sexuality, but also my disability.
And so what did that look like for you?
I think I, consider myself interfaith. So I borrow from a lot of faiths and kind of came up with my own. With family, I still celebrate some of the high holidays, Jewish holidays, and I have, family members who are Catholic also, or Lutheran. But for myself, I meditate a lot. I focus on, I read a lot of, scriptures from different religions. Someone that I really enjoy is Mirabai, who is the poet saint of India. I find her teachings very useful for me, especially when I'm kind of running around and stressed out. I find her work very calming. But yeah, I borrow from a lot of different places, and I found that really works for me. And I think it took me, a couple of years to figure that out, but I'm in a good place now.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, you're doing so many great things for people, for yourself. I don't want to skip ahead too far. So tell us, so you have 3 degrees. Tell us what they are.
Sure. So I have a master's in creative writing. I have the master's in religious studies that I just mentioned. Yeah. And then I got my doctorate in education and organizational leadership.
Oh, okay.
And so for my doctorate, once I had my identity and had my practice, I knew who I was and had to write. I wanted to do research. And, often I felt that people with disabilities were not just missing from the conversations, but were missing from sections of society, and so I wanted to, get the skills to not just do research, but, become a consultant and help, organizations improve on their inclusion.
Yeah.
So that was the reason for that. And that was really the catalyst for me to establish myself as a consultant. And, now I have my firm and I have a few folks working for me. So, things are moving forward.
That's awesome. I wanted to ask you about your process of learning how to write again. So learning how to use a computer and how to explain to people who are sighted how that works for someone to be able to use a computer and have that kind of autonomy.
Sure. So people who are blind, who are completely blind, or who are partially blind, use screen readers. And a screen reader application, it's runs on your computer, on your desktop or laptop. There's also mobile screen readers for your phone. And what it does is it reads what's on the screen. Mm-hmm. And so, often, I still use your standard QWERTY keyboard, but how I engage with the computers completely with just the different keystrokes. I can't use a mouse, so everything needs to be it's a combination of keystrokes. And screen readers are very robust application, and so the specific screen reader that I use has about 9,000 commands, and so it's a series of different strokes that I use to move the text on the screen, to bold things, to space things out, to, run the spell check. And so in essence, I write by listening to my computer read what's on the screen.
Wow. 9,000, that's mind-boggling to me. So Chad's always on me about using shortcut keys to make my life easier and, to be more productive. And, sure, I know how to cut and paste, but I'm so bad at that. I can't even imagine 9,000.
I was really bad at it too.
Were you? How long did it take you to really get confident at that?
Oh man, I think it took me a good 2 years to, I think, I consider myself a power user, and it's obviously because of my, I've always been a student. I've been a student for so long, for the last couple of years, that I feel that, I think I know about 200 commands really well. And I'm always working on learning new ways to do different things. But I think it was a good 2-3 years where I was like, okay, I'm finally in a place where I could take on, whatever comes my way.
Yeah. So when I met you, you were writing Blind. Blind was just about to be released. And you were really inventing yourself. And I was always so impressed with you and your ability to stay positive when things seemed bleak.
I think that, again, it goes to the support. And so I'll share a quick story with you. When I was getting my master's in religious studies through an instructor, I heard that there was the hugging saint of India was going to come to the Bay Area because she has an ashram here, a temple. And it's a big deal. People line up for days, or hours just to get the blessing from the hugging saint of India, which is Amma. And she gives you her blessing by giving you a hug. And so there I was, waiting in line for hours. And when I finally get to, see her, and I'm like, okay, hook me up. Here's my hug. She actually just shakes my hand and says, I could just see you and know that you've been loved. Somebody has really loved you. You don't need my blessing.
What?
I know.
You're like, but I've been standing here.
Exactly. So instead, she gave
cheated,
me,
man.
Yeah.
She gave me a Hershey's kiss instead.
Weird.
Exactly. But I think it wasn't until that moment that I realized, I've always been, loved. My parents just really loved me. My sisters really loved me. And I think, that's been always something that's helped me move through very dark times. And, when I lost my mom, that was very hard for me. But, I was able to, move forward. And again, that was my sisters. I'm very close to my sisters. And that's one of the reasons why I moved from San Francisco to Minneapolis, because my family's here.
Right. Yeah. And it's been a really good move for you. I mean, I personally think you've kind of blossomed since you've been there. I'd like to talk about Oleb, which is, you're very Oprah of you to name your company, your name spelled backward.
Totally. And I have no shame. I always say that. I preface that. And I totally copied Oprah.
Which is awesome. But you started with you decided to be a publisher. Tell us what, was going through your head when you decided, I want to publish other works from disabled writers.
Well, when Blind was published, it did really well. I was surprised, especially because, a lot of the response from a lot of literary agents and publishing houses was that, a story about a blind person isn't very commercial. They don't think a lot of people will be able to connect. And it was completely opposite. And I was really surprised with, the people that were most responsive. I had a huge support system from veterans.
Mm-hmm. Veterans of war?
Correct. Yeah. So a lot of, or people who were serving, in the military. And so, just the support was just, fantastic. However, within these various groups that came in to see me read, I had a lot of people with disabilities who would also say, "Hey, it's great that you made it, but how did you make it? Or I can't make it, and how can I get published?" And I got a lot of support from the Latino community and the LGBT community. Like, for instance, I got a fellowship from the Lambda Literary Foundation in California, and that was so instrumental in really helping me get like a mentor and learning, the world of publishing. But as a person with a disability, I've never had that space, and so that's where the idea for Oleb Books came from, where I wanted to build community. And what we're doing right now, we're not just publishing authors with disabilities. We are also curating content on our blog for people to learn how to, navigate publishing, how to write a query letter, how to look out for, how to find journals to publish your work.
That's awesome. And that can be found at olebbooks.com, right?
Correct.
So your first book was called Firsts, Coming of Age Stories by People with Disabilities. And I read it and it was fantastic. How did you find your writers?
It took a couple of years. I think, I was working, I have a column with the Bay Area Reporter, and it's a monthly column on disability issues. And so some of the people that I published in the anthology were people that I met, that experience of me interviewing them for a column. And, there were people from various backgrounds. So, I also put out a call for submissions via Poets and Writers and other literary magazines. And so I really, casted a wide net because I wanted this first book to really be representative and have as many people from different backgrounds as possible.
Yeah, you did a great job. How has the reception been for that book?
It's been really positive. It took a gold medal from the Reader's Favorite Book Awards. And so last November, I flew out to the Miami Book Fair and got the award, and, had the opportunity to, be a part of this big literary festival. And so I feel that the reception has been very positive. We get a lot of orders from universities. So schools are starting to assign it as college reading work. And so that's always been nice, to see it making an impact, not just for entertainment, but also in academia.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, that's awesome. That makes me happy. It's one of the books that you wrote, I think my favorite that never really gets talked about is Midday Dreams. Can you tell us a little bit about that story, the story itself, but also the publishing process for Midday Dreams? Yeah,
so Midday Dreams is an excerpt from a novel, and it started off as a short story. And I was very fortunate that I had, again, through the Lambda literary experience, an opportunity to share my work with a lot of prominent writers. And so, Felice Picano, who is like within, he's a big name in the LGBT publishing community, writing community, and he endorsed it, and so that really gave me the confidence to say, hey, let me put this out there. And I was also wanting to experiment with self-publishing, just an ebook. And I was surprised that just a novella of about maybe 7,000 words was able to get media coverage. So it was profiled in a couple of magazines. SF Weekly profiled the book, and it got reviewed by lots of places in Europe. And so it's probably my most successful piece of fiction because of the number of people who read it. And it's something that, I've been working on to expand that into like a bigger book for a couple of years now. And I'm hoping, to be putting the final touches on that project soon.
Oh, wow. Okay. So you have a novel in your future that we can look for.
Yes.
Awesome.
That's How far off is that one?
Yeah.
I'm kind of shy to talk about it because I feel like I jinxed myself. Like, I was on a podcast a couple months ago, and I said, "Oh, it's going to be out by 2020." It's just not going to happen. I feel my being a business owner just takes up a lot of my writing time. So now, like, I'm not writing every day like I would want to. I think I'm writing maybe 2 days out of the week, and so that's really delayed my process. And so and I'm still doing, my own journalism as well, for different companies. But, so it's definitely, it's in the works, and I'll definitely, make the big announcements once it's concrete.
Cool. Okay. Well, we'll remember to look for that. Well, I have a question. So, do you ever look at your retirement and those years and what do you picture yourself doing? How do you picture yourself spending your time?
I'm one of those people that I'm always doing a lot of things. It's hard and I think it just comes down to, it's hard for me to say no. And, my partner, James will tell you, he's like, oh my gosh, what did you volunteer us to do now?
I don't know what you mean at all.
Yeah. That's the serial entrepreneur talking in you.
It really is, so, I have Oleb Media, which is my ADA compliance firm, and that's busy. And, we have the publishing company, and I'm building partnerships with other nonprofits. And, I think I'm going to be one of those people that even if I, retire, I'm still going to be doing other things, maybe volunteering or be active. My grandmother lived to be 102. And I think it was because she was always busy. She always worked.
Yeah. Yep. And probably had a really positive attitude and enjoyed life.
Yep.
Yeah. My paternal grandmother lived to be 102. Oh, awesome. So Bella, we're going to be really old together.
I like that. Yes, I accept.
You are a little younger than me, but still. So here's what's interesting is you started out in tech and you really kind of ended up in tech because now Oleb Media, you help tech companies become ADA compliant. And that's pretty cool. You've kind of come full circle.
It happened again, organically. And I think that for me, I really dive deep. I'm a all or nothing type of person, when I commit to something. And so, it just made sense, and I was frustrated that, for a long time, one of the reasons why I was having a hard time finding work or couldn't get full-time work was because of the lack of digital inclusion. And so that's, digital inclusion is the ability to be able to access digital information or services, no matter of your socioeconomic background or your ability to do something. And so, digital inclusion benefits everyone. And I'm not just talking about, accessible websites. I'm talking about accessible interfaces on machines, like for instance, like ATMs or, different stations where you need to pay for stuff or access information like at airports and making those accessible for everyone, it was very important. So for a long time, lots of, companies were saying, oh, we are so about diversity. And I would go to their job application portal and I couldn't access it with my software.
Wow.
And when I would reach out to them, they would say, well, yeah, we don't know how to fix that. And so it took me a couple of years just to really say, okay, I went from being the person, okay, I'll write about it and say that you need to fix it, in my columns and as a journalist, but then take the next step and say, actually, you know what? I could be that person that could help you.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and talk to me, because one of the reason we know you is you came to us and we helped you with your first website. And I'm really excited about making our websites completely accessible. And talk to us about what that process looks like for a web company or an interface.
Well, it's for anyone, digital inclusion affects anybody. So even someone who, would be considered like a content creator, right? Even if you're just a blogger, adding, alt text to your images would be great. If you're a podcaster, making sure that you have transcripts, for your shows, making sure, on your website, they're using the right colors, so you're really trying to reach as many people as possible. And, for Oleb Media, our philosophy comes from the user experience. If you think that none of your users will be blind or deaf or, wheelchair users or be colorblind, you're greatly mistaken.
Well, and it's actually surprising how many people are colorblind. People don't think about that.
Oh, it's huge. It's like 1 out of 7 people have some level of colorblindness, and about 55% of people who are colorblind are not aware that they're colorblind.
Oh, interesting. Wow.
Wow. And then there's the people who are, who temporarily have a disability. Like, I had a friend who was, this avid, bike rider, and he fell over and broke both his hands. So then I had to teach him how to use, Siri and, get his, Alexa hooked up so he could, do things through audio.
Wow. Technology. It's
exactly,
amazing.
And it's one of those things that you never know what you'll need. I always tell people that, disability doesn't discriminate, and, why wouldn't you want to have as many people engage with your content or your products or services as possible?
Yeah. You mentioned alt tags earlier. Can you tell our listeners what an alt tag is?
Yeah. So, this is how a text that you use to describe images, for instance, if you're writing a blog about, turtles and you have a picture of a cute little turtle, then you would describe, image of a turtle, on a white sandy beach, right? And it just gives people information,
It helps tell the whole story.
It helps tell the story too. And, it also makes your content more searchable, because it improves your SEO, your search engine optimization, because then, these keywords get added to your post.
And your metadata, yeah.
Exactly, your metadata. So, it's a win-win. I mean, you get to include more people get to access your work, you improve, your visibility with, the different search engines. And so, I mean, I always tell people, or business owners, like, if you don't have a digital inclusion, policy, then you're not being,
you're missing out. Yeah,
exactly. You're not reaching out. You're not being your optimal self.
Totally. Yeah. And it's so important online. I mean, I used to teach SEO classes and people would just look at me, and I think about like how many people would describe an image as book cover, right? So for you as a blind user, that must have been really frustrating, right? Instead of, describing what the book cover looked like, so you had the full experience, you just got book cover.
Exactly. Yeah. And, there's also, videos and transcripts and all these things that are useful, for people with other disabilities. If people, with Oleb Books, we're very active on YouTube, and we're creating a lot of videos, a lot of, documentaries about, not just writing, but about our authors. My work is really to help launch the, or promote these writers with disabilities. And so we're doing a lot of, it's called descriptive audio. We're providing transcripts. We're doing closed captioning. We're, promoting, and, even our marketing materials we're make sure that they're fully inclusive and how we describe things and share things. So, it was very frustrating for me as a user. And, writing gave me the ability to say, hey, call people out and say, hey, this needs to be fixed. I'm a user, right. But it wasn't really until I started my doctorate and moved towards being a consultant that I realized, hey, we're consumers, our money is good too, So,
right. Yeah. It's a huge audience that's really just being completely disregarded.
Correct. And something that people don't always realize is that the disability community is the largest minority group. So according to the US Census, 1 in 5 people have a disability. But the disability community is positioned in a very unique way, where when you get people with disabilities, you often get their families and the agencies that support them.
Right. Yeah.
For instance, as a blind person, all my family donate and support things that are disability related. Mm-hmm. That didn't happen with me being gay. There's people in my family who are like, okay, right. Good for you. Don't talk about it. I don't want to hear about it. La 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 la. Right?
Yeah.
With me being Jewish, I have family members who are Catholic, and like, okay, well, good for you. I don't know what to do with, young people.
Right. Yeah.
But with disability is something that my family gets behind. And also, the organizations that support me, the nonprofits, the advocacy agencies, the government agencies, you get the buy-in with them too. Right. So it's a huge demographic.
Yeah, absolutely.
It really didn't cross my radar until like the last 10 years of my mother's life, when she was bound to a wheelchair. Mm-hmm. So then I would just find myself like raging at the fact that there weren't curb cuts, or someone would park their big truck across the sidewalk and we wouldn't be able to get down it.
Right.
Definitely. And, a lot of, when we look at, structural accessibility, curb cuts and automatic doors, those are all things that were made for people with disabilities, but we all benefit from that. Oh my God, how many times have I not benefited from automatic door?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's really a fascinating topic too, when you go back and look how recent we started having, curb cuts alone. When these things started coming into, our daily lives, it just wasn't that long ago.
It wasn't. The ADA turns 30 on July the 26th this year. And to think that,
only 30.
Exactly.
Wow.
So had I been born with a disability, I wouldn't have received any rights until I was, in middle school.
Right. Yeah. That's pretty crazy to think about. It's an important topic. I want to tell our listeners that Belo is going to be speaking at the San Diego Writers Festival this year on April 4th about, how to create opportunity for yourself as a disabled person. And I'm really excited that you're going to be joining us, Belo.
I'm excited too. It's, San Diego is so lovely.
It is. It's a good place. And it's going to be very sunny that day. I just want everyone to know that. There won't be any rain. So, Belo, I've heard that one of your favorite pastimes as a kid was gaming.
It was. It really was. And I've written about it too.
Yeah. I want to hear about, you've tried to do some gaming as a blind person. Talk to us about that.
There was this period of my life, of my blind life, where I think I'd been blind for 2 or 3 years. The dust was settling. I was I had figured out how to do everything the blind way. I had a job. I was in a relationship. And at that time, I started looking at, things that I used to do before that I wanted to get back. And one of them was playing video games. And so, that was a journey on its own where, lots of the gaming websites or consoles were not, accessible. And, some of the organizations have really stepped up and made that a priority. And, I would like to definitely credit Microsoft. They've been amazing in, ensuring that their controllers, their console, their the experience is as inclusive as possible. So, things have really changed in that department, in that space. But I feel that initially, when I was newly blind, 10 years ago, that wasn't the case. So I really struggled with, how to get back into it and, going online and trying to figure out how to do things with my way, or, if I hit this button, what does it really mean? What does it do? And so it was definitely a process of figuring things out and doing things differently.
Are you able to experience gaming at all now?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, no, I don't do it as much as I would like to. Do it a handful of times a week. But I play, I play online, and sometimes I play with people who don't even know that I'm blind. And so I always think that's pretty cool where, we're in a place where we're just engaging no matter who we are.
Mm-hmm.
What games are you playing?
I play, all kinds of different, games. I do it's going to sound so not like me, but I like a lot of the fighting games. And I think they're good stress, relievers, like after a, long day of work, like,
Sure. Oh, yeah.
But yeah, so I think those are, pretty easy, straightforward to play. I've also, there's this big move now to make, games, not games, but, team building exercises more accessible. So I'm spending a lot of time with that because, now with people being more aware, with organizations being more aware of, team building needs, or the importance of, fostering relationships within your teams, how do you make those accessible? So, I have 2 clients that are, that's what I'm working with is, they have a lot of training and they have exercises that say, oh, okay, please stand up and do this. Well, not everyone can stand up. How do we make this more accessible? And so,
interesting.
Exactly. Or how do you, what if you have people who are blind or people who don't have hands, or can't get up or can't stand or, can't shake their left foot,
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
we don't think about these things.
Exactly. So, recently I've been trying to, as I'm tapping in from my experience as a gamer, when did I feel like I was included? And a lot of it has been, playing, Xbox with my Xbox experience and, actually pulling from that experience and how do I put this into, the corporate, training room, right? And so I'm having a lot of fun with that. But yeah, when people, if you're in the space of training people, you have to realize that not everyone could do everything that you may ask them. And if you come across that experience, what do you do?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. This is similar in yoga. So I've taken a lot of yoga in my life. And I think what is really cool about yoga is everyone can experience the same benefits, but at different levels. So you might be able to reach over, bend over and touch your toes, right? Someone else might not be able to. So we adapt the moves so that it's accessible to everybody. And so I kind of think that's really what you're talking about, is everyone will get the same benefit out of it, but they go out about it a different way.
Absolutely. And, I'm glad you brought up yoga because yoga was one of the first activities that I got back when I became blind because it was so accessible. There was a lot of adapted yoga classes or yoga for the blind, in San Francisco. The Lighthouse had yoga classes. And so that was the first thing that I was like, well, that was easy, So yeah, I think definitely yoga is is very accessible.
Now, how'd you go from there to capoeira?
Well, capoeira is an Afro-Brazilian martial art, for those listeners who don't know. And capoeira is the national sport of Brazil. And it's an Afro-Brazilian martial art that was developed by African slaves during the slave period in Brazil. And it's very unique because you only use your legs. Every movement comes from your legs. And it's because as the slaves were developing this way to fight back against the Portuguese slave owners, often their hands were chained together.
Wow.
And so, so that's where that comes from. But it was very effective where a lot of them were able to use this martial art to escape and build, they call them quilongos, which are villages deep in the Amazons of free slaves or runaway slaves. And definitely. So I started capoeira when I was 12 years old, and definitely encouraged by my father and my father's family to practice capoeira, but later it became my own passion. And when I lost my sight, there was two things kind of holding me back. One is, how can I do this martial art that's incredibly acrobatic, without sight? And it's done to live music. That's the other thing too, where you're in a circle and there's two fighters in the middle of the circle, exchanging kicks. And, there's the music playing dictates how you play. So if the music's playing slow, you play slow. If it's fast, you play fast. And there's different rhythms that say take your opponent down, so that you take them down. And that's the other cool part about capoeira, where these the slaves who developed it disguised it as a dance, so they could practice it and tell their slave owners that we're just dancing, when in reality they were improving their technique so they could escape or gain some independence.
That's cool.
Exactly. So there was when I was blind, I was thinking, how am I going to do this again? Because it's done to live music. How am I going to do all these acrobatics? And so,
and there are actual kicks being thrown.
Exactly.
I've seen video of you. It's cool.
Thank you. Yeah. So it was definitely a process. I was in the Bay Area and I reached out to a handful of studios. The studio where I had trained was in San Jose. And although I did make it out there a couple of times, it was really far to keep up with my training on a weekly basis, and reached out to a couple of schools. And some schools say, we don't want to train you because it's a liability. We don't, the gym doesn't let us, train you, or our insurance doesn't cover you if you get hurt. They were really afraid of being, liable. But I came across, I reached out to Mestre Accordion in Berkeley, and who's actually one of the, he's like a living legend on his own. And so he said, I'll train you. I don't care that you're blind. I'll teach you. And he was wonderful in adapting capoeira for me. And showing me how to do different kicks and how to play with people, and teaching other people how to play with me. So it was wonderful. And, I owe him so much because he took a chance and it turned into something that was, very powerful for me.
Yeah. Yeah. That's neat.
Now, is there any place in the Midwest that you can go to now that you're no longer in the city?
There's a couple of capoeira schools here in Minneapolis, and so I've attended a couple of classes, and they're good. They've actually been very welcoming as well. And it's just, again, it's time, right? Like balancing your time. And I'm also, I'm turning 40 in a couple of months, and so I'm realizing that my recovery period is a little longer. So I'm
like,
thinking,
well,
still
exactly.
a pup. Come on.
How do I do this and not hurt myself? Honestly, I feel as though, like, especially because everything comes from, I don't have visual of myself, but I feel like, that my brain often writes checks that my body can't cash when it comes to like martial arts and stuff. And so I need to be careful where mentally I know how to do this, but it doesn't mean that my body could do it anymore.
Right.
And, what's weird is I don't, the last time I saw my reflection was, over 10 years ago. So, I'm always going to think I look or I am in my 20s when I'm not. So, working through that. But, it's definitely something that I do periodically. And sadly, I don't get to do it as often as I wish. But it's still part of my life.
What are you most excited about right now?
I think that, as somebody who really struggled with inequalities and access 10 years ago as a blind person, I think, 10 years ago when I would email someone and say, hey, I want to work for you, I want to work for your company, help me, apply because your website is not accessible, they often would say, well, if you can't fill out the application, then what makes you think that you could work for us? I got that a lot. Or if you can't figure that out, then, you can't work for us, 10 years ago, it was so easy for people to say, okay, this is too complicated. No. Versus, I think now we're in a space where people are recognizing the value that people with disabilities bring to the table. As people, anyone with a disability knows, is we have to reinvent ourselves every day. We have to be creative and, inventive and how to negotiate different things. Like for instance, like I have, I filled out I use a rubber band when I was traveling. I forgot my I have an app that takes pictures of things and tells me what they are. But I had a new phone and I couldn't figure out how to download the app. So I started using rubber bands at the hotel just so I could tell the difference between the shampoo bottle and the conditioner bottle, because that would make a big difference.
Right.
So, different ways. And, when I talk to people with disabilities, they make things, they adapt things, they find ways to make things happen. And so I think that level of creativity brings a lot of value to organizations.
That is exciting. Yeah. The future is wide open, right?
Absolutely.
Well, I want to tell readers how they can find you. We mentioned Blind, a memoir, Midday Dreams, and Firsts, coming-of-age stories by people with disabilities. These can be purchased on your website at olebbooks.com. People can also learn more about Belo on his personal website, belocipriani.com. That's BELOCIPRIANI.com. And then, of course, your ADA consulting firm at olebmedia.com. Thank you so much, Belo, for joining us. It's been really nice just getting to know you a little bit better and talking about, I think, how exciting the future is.
Thank you for having me. This was fun.
Awesome. So, folks, thanks for listening. Be sure to follow and rate The Premise wherever you get your podcasts. And we'll look forward to seeing you and talking to you next week.
Check us out at thepremisepod.com. Are you an author with a story to tell, but you're just not sure how to get that story out?
Guess what? You don't have to do it alone. Marnie Friedman is an incredible writing coach. She offers personalized support and expertise to guide you from a kernel of an idea to completion. Visit marniefriedman.com to learn more. That's MarniFreedman.com.
This episode is brought to you by Monkey See Media, a small boutique design firm offering award-winning websites, book cover designs, book trailers, and photography services.
And full disclosure, we love what we do. Chad and I founded Monkey See Media in 2004, and we're still going strong.
Visit monkeyseemedia.com. That's MONKEY, the letter C, olebmedia.com to see how we can help you promote your book, build a powerful online presence.
What else you got, Chad?
Let's see. We've got the San Diego Writers Festival. There are many writers. And they're a proud sponsor of our Premise podcast as well.
And it's going to be awesome. This year's keynote is Scott Gimple. He's the head writer of The Walking Dead. And the festival is free. It's open to the public. There's going to be educational panels and workshops, famous authors, up-and-coming authors, kids and teen programming, and live theater performances. Oh, and there's music. Oh, and there's food.
Oh, but wait, there's more. You also get a copy of our home game.
You're silly. But wait, there is more. There will be literary agents taking pitches from authors looking to get their books published. The festival is about building community and celebrating storytelling of all kinds. It's happening April 4th, 2020 at the Coronado Public Library.